Bonsoir, désolée pour ce tout petit retard. Good evening and welcome for this first conference of the Depot Live Show. Je m'appelle Léa Bottani-Dechaud, je travaille chez Rotor et j'ai l'honneur et le plaisir de vous guider tout au long de cette soirée. Hi, I'm Léa and I'll be your host for tonight. L'événement de ce soir va osciller entre le français et l'anglais. Chez Rotor et en Belgique, de manière générale, nous avons développé une habitude de jongler avec les langues. Ne vous inquiétez pas, tout va bien se passer. Tonight we'll switch between English and French. Don't panic, everything is going to be alright based on our Belgium experience, which is at the crossword between 3 to 4 linguistic area. Il y aura un replay de cette conférence dans quelques jours en anglais et en français. Will be replay switching between languages is inherent to the background of this event. For over 2 years and a half, thanks to EU fundings and regional supports, we teamed up with 8 partners from France, Belgium, and the UK to work on promoting reuse of building material in the construction industry. Tonight, Rotor, Bellastock, and Salvo will present you their vision, their work, and then their experience on reuse, and also on reuse. Cet événement s'inscrit dans le projet FCRBE qui est mené par 8 partenaires européens afin de promouvoir les pratiques de réemploi dans la construction. You are welcome to ask your question in French or in English. Vous êtes les bienvenus à poser vos questions en français. On fera du mieux que l'on peut pour les traduire. Mais tout d'abord, I would like to first Envie Le Labo, who is welcoming us tonight. Et je suis ravie de céder la place à Nesrine Dani, qui a mené le développement de ce bâtiment exemplaire qui nous accueille ce soir. Madame Nesrine Dani, je vous laisse donc la parole pour nous présenter la structure.
So now I'm lost. I don't know if I have to start in English or in French.
You're welcome to speak in any language you would like.
Start in English, maybe I'll switch in French if I'm not comfortable. Renowned in Europe. We are a French umbrella organization that gathers 50 social enterprises activities. So our members are going to collect, sort, repair, and resell home appliances. It represents 2,800 employees in France, and we collect a third of France, and we refurbish 125,000 equipments per year in France. Thank you. So we are today at Envie Le Labo. So that's the building in the picture. The ambition of this eco place is to bring simple, easy, and accessible solutions to citizens to lead a sustainable and solidarity lifestyle. Concretely, if you come to Envie Le Labo, you can repair your home appliances. You can give your old equipment that you're not using anymore. You can buy refurbished domestic appliances who are guaranteed by our shop. And you can also learn by doing through free hands-on workshops. And finally, you can visit the place, which is a circular economy hub through its constructions. So we're going to focus on this dimension. it was important for Envie to build a place that reflects our environmental values. So we did our best to a study that has proven that we succeeded to avoid the use of 20 tons of new elements in the construction. This has been possible to avoid the use of materials. So a lot of the walls in the place are raw. We don't have suspended ceilings, for example, and so these are the most important things. And we also supplied our materials and furniture from reuse through deconstructions and through end of stocks. Thank you. As I was saying, we worked with an agency called EVEA on a circularity study. The scope is the second work and the interior design. And the methodology used is the MFA that you must know, so the material flux analysis. Standard one with only new elements on the constructions, and the Envie one. And so at Envie Le Labo, we succeeded to reuse all the lists that you are seeing here and that I cannot read because it's too far from me. So the outside of the bricks, reused bricks in the building. Maybe you see them behind me. The carpet you see here, tiles, the wood that we have used for all the custom furniture, like this one, glass for glass walls, mirrors, and all the other office furnitures. So this slide is in French, but it's the details of what I was saying. In France, we make the difference between the reuse with or without transformations. It's réemploi and réutilisation. And we also studied the quantity of materials and equipment made with recycled cells between the standard scenario and the Envie scenario. That was also important for us to make local procurement. So we worked with it really locally at the region level. And we have created an educational tour around all these different material and objects to showcase their stories and the different partners with whom we worked. The objective is really to raise awareness of the citizen and to change the way they look reuse, to make it more modern and less désuet. So this is the outside of the building, the wood I was talking about. It comes from 4 different varieties of wood from end of stocks of construction sites locally. So it was redesigned by the architect according to the available wood. Then we have the ground floor, so it's the shop. So you see the absence of false ceilings. Another view of the shop. You can go next. So this is our repair shop. Everything is second-hand. Then this is a separation wall that we like a lot. It's made with washing machine doors and all windows wood, old windows wood. This is where we are staying. So the kitchen, the next picture is the kitchen, which is, no, not this one, but the after, yeah, again, yes. So here everything is also reused, the sink, the floor, everything, the bricks and kitchen cupboards. This is our offices, and the last picture, it's our green roof, which is not reused, but it's a good thing for biodiversity. This project would not be able to exist without the support of key partners. First, the city of Paris, our PRO in charge of e-waste in France, and also different private foundations. And the last slide, it's an overview of the different reclaimed building providers we worked with. So there's not Bellastock, unfortunately, but there are also different actors and an interesting diversity between big constructions company and social economy actors. If you want to learn more about the project, you will receive the presentation, I don't know, but you can visit our website.
Well, thank you very much for this tour. Like for people in Paris, like I really invite you to come and see because it's really nice. I also someone told me that there are some like cuts in the live, and just to let you know that we'll come back with une vidéo allégée. But maybe I can keep going, and now I'll give the floor to my colleague Ghyoot from Rotor. To briefly introduce Rotor, let's say we are a research group développé au Palis, un annuaire en ligne qui documente les revendeurs de matériaux de réemploi en Belgique, aux Pays-Bas et depuis peu en France grâce à Bellastock. In 2016, Rotor launched a spin-off called Rotor. And for now, we will take you on a time travel and look at reuse from an historic perspective. Nous allons remonter le fil du réemploi pour remettre en perspective son histoire et dessiner des pistes pour le futur. Donc, Michael, je te laisse la parole.
Merci beaucoup, Léa. Merci pour cette introduction. Hi, everybody. Tonight, I would like to share with you a few ideas that all come from our practice at Rotor. It can be from the research project we undertake, but also from the assistance we offer to different building owners and building commissioners, such as in the pilot operation as part of the FCRBE project. And it also comes from the people we meet, such as the reclamation dealers that we visited in Belgium and neighboring countries. Please note that these ideas are certainly not definitive. They are there to open the discussion, and they, of course, only reflect our own views. But to start with, I propose a short detour through history, and I propose to get back 16 or 17 centuries ago at the Romans' times. Maybe you know that, but Romans had very complex regulations on the reuse of building materials. And the the quantity, but also the complexity of these rules suggests that salvaging building materials was no doubt very common at that time. So for instance, you see in the Justinian's Digest that there are a few references to this idea of reusing building materials, and there were quite a few rules and laws regarding this question. And a bit later, the Majorian Ordinance on Public Building also addressed the question of reusing building materials. And what we can see from these regulations is that reuse at that time was not only a question of opportunism, it was not only a question of finding materials that were available, but it was also a question entailing, I would say, the cultural and even the civic values that were considered to be embedded in the building. So for instance, in the Majorian Ordinance, we can read that materials from public building, first of all, we can read that public buildings were not supposed to be taken down. They were supposed to be preserved as much as they can. But in the event they couldn't be kept as such and they had to be dismantled, then the materials were to be reused, but only in other public buildings. And that was a way to preserve somehow the civic values of these original buildings. And especially during the decline of the empire, this way of cherishing ancient materials was, of course, a way of preserving traces of a somehow fading glory. Let's now skip to the Ancien Régime, and more specifically in an architectural treatise from the second half of the 18th century. It's a book written by architect Pierre Pat, a French architect, and it includes very detailed recommendations for architects about reclaiming materials from ancient buildings. Nowadays, we are writing a lot of recommendations in different guidebooks as part of the FCRBE project to accompany architects and building commissioners to integrate reuse practices in their project. But in fact, everything is already written in this old book. We just have to adapt the spelling and the way things are expressed. For instance, on this passage, I'm not sure you can see it quite well on the screen, but I invite you to read the book from Gallica. It's available online. And you can see that it recommends conducting proper reclamation inventory to quantify the reusable materials. It also advises to make agreement with contractors before starting the works on how to share profits of reusing materials. Pierre Pat notes that this kind of arrangement is an excellent incentive for the careful dismantling of the materials. Let's stay in France 2 or 3 major revolutions later. We are now in 1903 in Paris. And I would like to show you this incredible directory of construction contractors, which is somehow the equivalent of today's yellow pages, if you want. And there is a section that is dedicated to demolition contractors. It's about 20 to 25 pages long, with a lot of names and a lot of enterprises that are referred to in this directory. And we can see that almost all of them were also salvage material dealers. On the different ads that you see there, you see that it's Entreprise Générale de Démolition. This a demolition contractor, but you also see that they are selling second-hand materials such as portes, croisées, persiennes, grilles, balcons, cheminées en marbre de tout style, des glaces, des escaliers, des réservoirs, des parquets in oak, in different type of woods, bricks, etc., etc. Very interesting way to see that, in fact, at that time, the demolition activity and the salvage activities were completely intermingled. Many official publications at that time also attest that demolition contractors would pay to access the buildings slated for demolition, because demolitions were a source of profit for building owners and for contractors who would reclaim and resell materials for reuse. Let's now move to Brussels in 1928. We have here a picture of the demolition of the Palais Granvelle, which was a building owned by the university at that moment, or at least used by the University of Brussels at that moment. And you see this picture, which is an incredible witness of an old school demolition site. If we close up on this site, it is stunning to see how carefully the materials are dismantled, sorted, and stored there. And if we look at the small sign on the left of the facade, we see that it advertises the sale of materials. So inspiringly, the demolition site was in fact a salvage yard in itself, and people would come to the demolition site to buy batches of reclaimed materials. Let's stay in Brussels in 1958. It's the big World Fair, the first major expo after World War II, and it was a huge success. It showcased architectural prowesses of that time and drew millions of visitors. At the end of the show, though, most pavilions needed to be taken down. Yet, some pavilions were carefully dismantled and rebuilt somewhere else, becoming schools, swimming pools, office buildings, exhibition halls, and even a nightclub that is still in use today, probably closed for the moment, but soon to reopen. You don't really recognize the facade in this case from the original pavilion, but the structure, all the different beams and structural beams are exactly those from the original building, and they are still there working as the original building. So what I would like to say now is that history can of course be a valuable source of inspiration, but we don't have to be naive. Let's for instance remember that the economy of the Roman Empire was entirely based on slavery, and according to many historians, not the best example of sound natural resources management. The demolition industry in Paris in the second half of the 19th century was a violent operation, described by Émile Zola and writers alike as a genuine disemboweling of the urban fabric, driven by greedy real estate promotion and the will of the authority to improve its control over the working class. The decision to demolish an artwork such as the Palais Granvelle was, at best, very debatable. This event was an unbridled celebration of profligate consumption, an infinite notion of progress, and a festival of all sorts of new building materials, such as concrete, laminates, plastic-based materials, and asbestos. So yes, exactly the same materials that now raise so many questions about their salvage ability. In the meanwhile, the mechanization of demolition and construction sites, the use of dynamite and wrecking balls, the increase in labor costs, and the real estate pressures all impact reuse practices. Yet, all these examples should help us to take the best ingredients from these ancient situations to reflect on the direction we want to head in from now on. Allow me to have a go at this delicate exercise. From the Roman regulation, we hold on to the idea that reusing building materials should go hand in hand with preserving existing buildings. Both approaches are the best waste prevention strategies we can dream of. They are also the best ways to avoid the major environmental impacts related to the production of the new materials that would be necessary if we keep rebuilding from scratch. And this very idea is central in the notion of circular economy as developed by Swiss architect Walter Stahel since the 1970s, although this notion also tends to be eluded by more recent and more consensual interpretations. What Stahel proposed, essentially, is to shift our models for creating prosperity towards economic activities that are busy with lengthening the use value of existing goods. It means maintenance, reparation, refurbishment, reuse, you name it. In this circular economy, we would stop extracting raw materials to produce new goods that are quickly consumed and disposed of. We would instead learn how to take care of what is already there, which is, in a way, learning to live on and to live with the legacy of 200 years of massive industrial production and the associated debt in terms of environmental damages. In his early writings, Stahel puts forward a model, an economical model, in which small-scale, decentralized, regionally anchored, and man- or woman-powered enterprises would replace industrial installations and the massive use of fossil fuels on which these hinge. Such a description couldn't fit better with the types of businesses that we meet when we visit reclamation dealers in Belgium and neighboring countries. And you will see a more complete presentation of that sort of businesses in Becky's and Sara's presentation in a while. So, if circular economy is the way to go, we can, and in fact we need, to learn from these existing salvage and reclamation dealers and to draw on their experience they have acquired, sometimes over several generations. Now, from Pierre Pat's treatise, we might hold on to this idea that architects and specifiers in general need to develop more situated knowledges about the materials that they use, or in our case, they reuse. At the time of Pat, many architects were still very much involved on construction site. It is interesting to recall that heroic figures of the profession, such as Palladio or Borromini, both started their career as stone cutters. This is rarely the case today, to say the very least. Nowadays, most architects rely on written specifications, complex tendering procedures, and refer to technical standards to mediate their relation with materials and with builders. Yet, a fluent communication between design and construction phases, between architects, builders, and materials is important when it comes to working with reclaimed building materials. These are indeed disruptive of standard procedures. And one of the reasons for that is that once materials are installed in a building, they become subject to many demands from the users, from the weather, from biological agents, and so on. And through these complex and somehow random effects, they become distinctive. To a certain extent, after a few years of use, even identical standardized materials tend to become unique specimens of their sort. Use of the material, or on the contrary, improve its performances, whether they require specific actions or can be left as such, whether they are precious witnesses left by the times gone by, or dangerous substances likely to affect someone's health. Assessing all these complex aspects would probably be impossible with a one-size-fits-all approach. To live up to the challenge raised by such a range of situations, we should rather draw on forensic knowledge grounded in experience and immediate contact with the materials. Working with reclaimed materials also requires mental elasticity and a good sense of adaptation. It hinges on a specific type of creativity. Of course, fostering such qualities for future designers and specifiers, as we will try to do this summer with the summer school that is organized as part of the FCRBE project, will be another challenge for the years to come. And this example on the slide shows a project in which we assisted a building owner and a team of architects in integrating reclaimed window frames for the facade of the building. And that was interesting because it was a public project in which they had to ask for a demand to build, and then a building permit, and then they had to contract the contractor. But at that time, they still didn't know exactly what type of reclaimed windows they would have. The exact dimension were still unknown. And it's at the very end of the process that they made a sort of inventory of what was available at that very moment. You see that on the sort of puzzle at the bottom of the screen. That were all the possibilities. And we were quite surprised to see that, in fact, there were more possibilities than we initially thought. And the architects could have some fun in composing a facade from these different elements and integrating, I would say, architectural consideration in the process that didn't have to abandon their creativity. They just had to canalize it and to direct it towards this process. And the end result is quite impressive in this case. I'm not sure the architect would have spontaneously drawn a rounded window, but because it was there in the selection, it attracted their attention and they decided to use it, in this case upside down, which is probably the signature of architects, if I can say. Well, there is also a transversal lesson to be learned from all these historical examples. They all demonstrate that reusing building materials does not require super high-tech tools. Reuse did not wait for mechanization, for robots, for BIM models, for digital twins, or for complex project management tools. It is possible that all these new developments can play their part in fostering reuse practices. And only time will tell if this is really the case. For now, what I would like to share is that these last years with Rotor we have had the opportunity to document, follow, and even take part in many projects that successfully reused many different sorts of building materials in many different contexts. And if we had to summarize the three main ingredients that made this possible, there would be, first, an ability to decompartmentalize expert attitudes, which is a way to listen to and to learn from the points of view of the other people around the table. Secondly, they all have in common a shared interest in both the technical and the cultural dimensions of building materials. So what building materials essentially are, but also what they can tell about culture, about history, about economy, about the society we live in. And third, they all have a taste for doing things slightly differently. And this taste is probably always grounded in the conviction that the environmental and social challenges that we are all facing require nothing else. And I really hope that my contribution to this event and the FCRBE project as a whole will help spread this appetite for fostering reuse.
Thank you, Michael. That's a nice end and nice words to lie on and to think of. I think it was super intense, so we don't have any question from the chat now, but I guess it maybe going to come later on. So I'll go for the next presentation now. So we'll cross the channel with Sara Morel, CEO of Salvo, and Becky, Creative Director. So maybe just to briefly introduce Salvo, that is not with us tonight, but live from across the channel. Depuis plus de 30 ans, Salvo porte la voix du secteur des revendeurs de réemploi en Grande-Bretagne et au-delà. Salvo also organizes fairs, provides consultancy on reuse practices for the construction sector and public authorities. Leur site web, salvoweb.com, documente des revendeurs en Grande-Bretagne et dans le monde entier. Il est aussi une marketplace pour les produits de réemploi. Depuis plus de 2 ans, dans le cadre du projet FCRBE, Becky et Sara ont sillonné la Grande-Bretagne et l'Irlande à la recherche des revendeurs. Tonight, they will take us on a tour to discover UK and Irish salvage dealer, but I think also
2021 is our 30th year in business, and the 30th is known as the Pearl Anniversary. So this June, we're holding a digital festival to celebrate reclamation and reuse around the theme of imperfect beauty as an ode to the pearl. Beauty can be found in the reclamation of non-matching sets of less than perfect condition, but reusable and durable materials. Over the last 40 years, the word second-hand has been refashioned in favour of reclaimed, and desirability has grown for both the ethos, but also for the reclaimed look. Shockingly today, you can find building material manufacturers that sell brand new bricks as reclaimed. Reacting to popular demand for the authentic reclaimed materials, they counter this, and I quote, "It is better to fake it with new." You will also see false warnings that profess to be facts about the risks of working with reclaimed materials. So we are fighting back, and one of the major deliverables that Salvo will be contributing to the FCRBE project is a truly reclaimed label. This will allow customers to cut through the industry smokescreen and tell the difference between authentic material versus an imitation. Our scheme will expose this fraudulent behaviour and increase the visibility and representation of these products and promote ethical dimensions of reclamation and the sector. The look is obviously just one part of the sensory difference that you get from reclaimed materials. And whether it's the fact that they are more likely to have been handmade or the hands that have carefully cleaned and prepared reclaimed materials for reuse, the humanity of truly reclaimed materials sets them apart. Like us, they have a past, and we believe they're ready to bring that experience to your project. So one may try to replicate the look, but truly reclaimed materials feel different. And next. So hopefully you're seeing the first salvage directory that Salvo released in '91, and Thornton Kay, the man that created it, and connected, literally. So this is Thornton Kay. He founded Salvo as a directory for reclamation dealers to connect the trade and to really just to make it easier for people to find places to buy architectural salvage and reclaimed building materials. Rewinding to the 1970s, we'll take you on a bit of a history tour as well. So Salvo's story began as a reaction to the UK demolitions of the time, when masses of reclaimable architectural features were destroyed. During the peak of the demolitions of the 60s and 70s, something like 24 million tonnes of unique timbers were lost. For some that witnessed the waste, it spurred a need to rescue materials, and their pioneering businesses established the reclamation scene that we recognise today. Thornton was early to publicise the environmental benefits of saving endangered architectural salvage, and aged just 23, he co-founded the Comtech Cooperative and organised the first international green building and alternative technology fair. Reusing materials gathered from their building work, the projects and multiple craft workshops inspired curious customers, which was when the reclamation yard naturally developed. Thornton established Walcott Reclamation with Rick Knapp in 1976, which became a destination for everything from fine architectural antiques to reclaimed building materials. At the time, unbelievably, a Georgian fireplace being trashed in a skip was a common occurrence, and Rick and Thornton would regularly go around and rescue them. Today, there is an established market for salvage like this, where trashing them is generally considered bonkers. We're in an interesting transition. Sure, it's easy to see the beauty and value in antique fireplaces, but there is hope that we may also find significance and eco-appeal in designing with modern salvage, for which we've just seen some wonderful examples. And I think it's an agenda that's pushed brilliantly by our partners, Rotor and Bellastock. So initially a dealer directory, Thornton left Walcott to grow Salvo with monthly magazines and also launched the marketplace to connect people online, which helped the movement just grow even more globally. Now it has a 4,000 strong worldwide directory of salvage-friendly businesses. The Salvo Code was established in 1995 to offer confidence for buyers. Simply look for the crane logo. You can see it just about in the corner of the screen there. And it's an ancient symbol of vigilance, and that's the sign of Salvo members. So it's not officially a trade body, and members are peer approved, but it is the closest thing to it. And Salvo represents the trade and petitions government to highlight the environmental benefits that the industry offers in reducing building waste. So our ethos is reuse for the world you want. And Salvo really creates a community around this mission. SalvoWeb.com matches something reclaimed or recrafted with someone that wants to reuse it. So everyone from DIYers to designers, architects and builders can use free tools like the demolition and wanted alerts to shop, source or sell through Salvo's network. So not only a digital window into the world, we also known for big architectural salvage fairs. And in the past, a single fair has gathered a record 1,300 tonnes of reclaimed salvage and antique items. And this June, we're hoping to virtually gather even more at Salvo Festive in Perfect Beauty. The Salvo Fair pictured returned to Thornton's original ideas with Comtech. And this was when I first got involved with Salvo to really bring together a holistic green living festival that encompassed the lifestyle of reuse. So here you can see Douglas McMaster, a zero waste chef behind the restaurant Silo, and also upcycled reclaimed fashion. Salvo fairs have featured large iconic pieces of salvage history, including London's Westminster Bridge, which is pictured here, and the Baltic Exchange, which subsequently actually sold on Salvo Web. At the time, in 2006, it was the largest chunk of architectural salvage to be advertised for sale and sold via the internet. Originally, it was the last remaining exchange floor in the City of London. And if you know London skyline, then you'll know the office building known as the Gherkin, which you can just see behind this image here, that now stands in its place. And in front, you'll see Mark McGowan, artist in residence at the Salvo Fair in 2006, who actually travelled 64 kilometres head over heels from the Gherkin to the fair's location in Hertfordshire. It took him just over 2 weeks, and with him he had a reclaimed door and 4 reclaimed bricks to campaign for reuse before recycling. We're not going to give the artist credit for the policy changes and EU waste hierarchy directive, but this was just a few years before it came into place and prioritised reuse over recycling.
It's impossible to generalise, but this last year was broadly strong for the reclamation trade in the UK and Ireland, particularly with demand from private homeowners that were keen to build and adapt their living environments, and I think with a little more consciousness for the environment with the materials that they chose. Which leads us to the reason we're here, to show and celebrate the vast UK salvage scene that, despite this year's successes, remains underutilised by mainstream construction. So we want to share some examples to showcase the diversity of the businesses we visited as part of the FCRBE project. Starting in Glasgow, Scotland, which will host the upcoming COP26, where we hope to share some of the FCRBE work and petition the UN and governments to measure the carbon benefit and mandate reuse in the built environment. Part of a network of 30 community wood recycling organisations in the UK, Glasgow Wood Recycling is a social enterprise which rescues between 700 to 900 tonnes of timber each year. Just a fantastic example of what the reuse economy can do for a city and also the local community. They also reuse some of the timber to ethically deliver landscaping projects and bespoke furniture, which provides employment and training. Unsurprisingly, Scotland's not short of a whiskey barrel, so Zero Waste Scotland funded Glasgow Wood Recycling to develop new ways to maximise the value of these end-of-life oak barrels, which typically end up being chipped for biomass or sent to landfill. Here you can see an example of the cladding they developed. Within the project, they've created unique hospitality environments with the texture of the staves, or use parts of the barrels for play areas where designs can often resort to materials like plastic. This is roofslates.com in Greater Manchester, a family-run business with specialist knowledge and a strong reputation as a leading UK supplier of roof slates. They've worked with everyone from football stars to local authorities, and they've even supplied slates to our Houses of Parliament, saving and selling around 1 million reclaimed roof slates a year for the past 25 years. Salvo calculated in 2019 that the business saved around 650 tonnes of carbon dioxide annually, which is the equivalent energy needed to build 8 new houses using new materials or make 50 electric cars. Nostalgia is a long-standing member of the Salvo Code and the only UK registered Leparda member specialising in antique fireplaces outside of London. A special example of the UK's market in heritage architectural pieces. The restoration workshops is incredible to see, with expertise in repairing fireplaces made of marble, slate, stone, wood and cast iron. The family-run business was started over 40 years ago. It's currently managed by Nick Durrant, who learnt the trade watching his father. He started in the workshop as a teenager, and restoration training took him from cast iron fireplaces to marble surrounds in 7 years. They stock close to 3,000 fireplaces, some dating back to the 18th century. The care they take in restoring them will ensure that they last, not simply for the next customer, but well beyond. Wilson's Conservation Building Products is a prime architectural salvage and design business in Northern Ireland. Large suppliers of antique and reclaimed floors, from parquet to woodblock flooring and planks. Wood flooring is a consistently strong stock category in the market, even when the choice of timber changes with the taste of time. Wilson's has supplied many fashion retailers as well as royal palaces. When writing about reclaimed materials and fashion environments, we particularly enjoyed the comparison a US dealer made between reclaimed wood and dad style, which is characterised by dads that don't supposedly follow trends. Reliable and nostalgic, reclaimed wood can conjure that same sentiment, being able to withstand fleeting trends and create authentic spaces. This female-run business, Ashwell's Reclaimed Timber, was one of the first visits we made. The yard holds massive stocks of old, rare, tropical and temperate hardwoods, salvaged from docks, wharfs and marine installations. With an on-site sawmill, timber bulks are resawn into usable structural timbers, floorboards and planking. From 1835 to 1935, Britain imported more than half the entire world's timber exports. Tropical hardwoods such as greenheart and jarrah were imported from Africa, Australia and Guyana. Ashwells protect this heritage material. They work to make integration of their reclaimed timbers as easy as possible for landscape architects, designers and specifiers. They also offer CBDs to industry with guidance on sustainable design. In Salvo's first reclamation study in 1998, it was estimated that 2,400 tonnes of reusable timber was skipped in the UK daily. Of this, 240 tonnes was reusable tropical hardwood, which equaled 10 square miles of tropical rainforest a year. Next is London Reclaimed Brick Merchants, as the name suggests, is a leading supplier of reclaimed bricks, as well as stone and roofing material throughout London and the UK. We visited their Buckinghamshire site as they were in the process of relocating their London yard. Most salvage materials are reused in cities, but many of the city reclamation yards have been closing or migrating out to more rural areas. London Reclaimed Brick Merchants bucks this trend by staying within the city, which alleviates some of the pressure on the road transport while also providing job opportunities to the local area. Stocking over 3 million bricks, which are recovered through their own demolition services, all the bricks are hand-picked and cleaned of excess mortar and cement. UK brick companies make and import around 2 to 3 billion new bricks each year, and we crush roughly the same amount. We find this figure staggering when you consider that 2 to 3 million bricks, billion bricks, embody the equivalent energy as 450 to 650 million litres of petrol. We chose Cardiff Reclamation as an important example of a yard that has an expansive inventory but might be harder to discover as they don't have a website. They're online in the Salvo directory where you can explore their regular stocks, but I would recommend a visit in person for their broad range and one of the largest collections of doors I've ever seen. Like many yards, this is a long-standing family-run business, but the future is uncertain with no younger generation coming in to continue it. That's why this project is so vital, to not only promote existing businesses to new audiences, but also encourage younger generations to enter the industry.
And of course, we can't talk about the UK salvage scene without mentioning Salvo co-member Vitruvius, who we just included in France's AD 100. A destination salvage company coupled with its acclaimed design studio, Vitruvius has built a reputation for reclaiming brilliant examples of desired material, but also for creating demand with their eye for quality salvage and the unexpected way that they work with the materials in their design projects. They position reclaimed materials in a way that can shift mindsets. The current diversification of what the world sees as beautiful, we think can only be good in encouraging more reuse. We're still collating our statistical surveys, but anecdotally, even though business has generally been strong during this time, supply has also been challenging. When construction is booming, demolitions tend to take place at an even faster rate, which means potentially more materials were lost during this time. This makes market making for the reuse of less conventional and more modern materials essential, with an attitude to embrace what's available and to use it as a design opportunity. Thank you.
Wow, thank you very much. I've been working on this project for 2 years and a half now, and I'm still really, really impressed by looking at the diversity of materials that there, like the knowledge of those existing business that we tend to forget they are there, and they are, and I think it's just really great to see it. Thank you very much. Maybe before to switch to Bellastock, we have a question for Michael for Rotor. I'll ask it in French because it's in French. C'est concernant le projet Zineke. La question, c'est donc le projet avec les façades. Comment gérer les démarches administratives lorsque l'on ne connaît pas la composition de la façade, lorsqu'on connaît la composition de la façade que tardivement?
Yeah, that's a fair question. So the question is, how did we deal with all the administrative regulations and norms regarding the integration of those reclaimed window frames in this facade, and the uncertainty we had about their final dimensions, for instance? And what we did, it was a bit of a leap in faith, because we didn't know at that moment that it would work, but we tried to take all the rules that applied to the size of windows on the facades. So meaning, if, for instance, for fire regulations, you need a window that is not too far or that is not too close from the other windows. So that gives a certain range of possibilities. Then there are other rules regarding the distance between the window and the other house, the neighboring house. And in this case, it also gives another range. And so we added up all these rules, and we said, okay, that's the minimal and the maximal zone we may have. And any window that would fall into this zone strictly answers to any requirement. You cannot reject them because they comply with the existing regulation. And that's how we did it. And because it was a back facade on the back of the building, so there were not a lot of people seeing it from the street. In this case, the authorities accepted to deliver the permit. And I would have been curious to see, in case they rejected, on which basis they would have rejected it, because formally speaking, it was all clean.
Peut-être juste pour la faire en français, comme la question a été posée en français. Donc ce que tu as expliqué,
donc en gros, on a pris la somme de toutes les règles qui s'appliquent à la mise en place ou à la dimension des fenêtres, donc les règles d'urbanisme, les règles de mitoyenneté, les règles de résistance au feu, les règles d'éclairage, etc., etc. On a fait la somme de tout ça, ça nous a donné une espèce de surface minimale et de surface maximale qu'on a soumise à l'autorité délivrante, qui a donc accepté aussi, parce que c'était une façade à l'arrière d'un bâtiment, donc il n'y a pas grand monde qui la voyait, en tout cas pas depuis la rue, et c'est passé. Donc on a eu quelque part de la chance sur ce coup de Paris-là, mais ceci dit, j'aurais été curieux de voir dans quelle mesure ou sur quelle base ils l'auraient rejeté, parce que formellement parlant, ce qu'on proposait répondait à l'ensemble des règles qui s'appliquent à la dimension des fenêtres.
Good. So I have a question for Salvo, Rotor and Bellastock. So, that's a tricky one. I'll read it in French. Est-ce que Salvo, Rotor et Bellastock ont la même approche du réemploi, ou pensez-vous que cette approche doit être remise dans son contexte? So I'll translate it on the spot in English. So are Salvo, Rotor and Bellastock as the same approach regarding reuse, or do you think this approach needs to always be analyzed in regards to its context? So, I don't know. Maybe Hugo, you start?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yes, actually, that was a question I planned to tackle in the presentation of Bellastock. So it's just a question of minutes, and I'm not going to spoil anything. So I stay here.
But maybe Salvo has already his own opinion on what you're going to say. So maybe you can. Do you want to take the floor, Salvo?
I think one thing that's been brilliant about the project is that it's brought obviously like-minded businesses that are totally on board with the mission, but that doesn't mean that it doesn't challenge one another in our approach, and that's just benefited the project in terms of our different perspectives and the markets that we're coming with experience from. But I would say there certainly hasn't been any major disagreements. It's just an interesting point of view shared, I would say, but really excited to hear what Hugo presents. You may disagree.
Okay.
No, I've got nothing to add on that. I completely agree with Sara.
Yeah.
I hopefully the different presentation will somehow present the common points, but also the places in which we may have slightly other points of view. But as Sara said, it's very much complementary in the project and super inspiring to learn from these different perspectives and standpoints.
Yeah. Good. So now, je vais maintenant donner la parole à Bellastock, les organisateurs de cet événement. Basé à Paris, Bellastock développe depuis 2012 une expertise pionnière en France sur les réemplois. Bellastock is an experimental architectural practice focusing on the valorization of material resources, which include providing technical assistance regarding reuse for many architectural projects. Grâce à eux, et dans le cadre du projet FCRBE, Opalis documente maintenant les revendeurs de matériaux de réemploi implantés sur le territoire français, et il y en a beaucoup. I'll give the floor to Clara, Bergia and Hugo Topalov, who will give us an insight of what's behind Bellastock. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Léa, for this introduction. First of all, we must say that it's really a chance and a thrill, I must say, to be part of this project and to have the opportunity to gather tonight to share. We'll try to make you a quick glance, a quick aperçu, a quick history of Bellastock approach regarding this reuse question. We can continue. So yes, for Bellastock, finally all began in a wasteland. So this organization was created 15 years ago with the creation of a festival of architecture that was inviting students, and that still is inviting students and a young generation of architects to build and live an ephemeral city for a week. So the basic idea was to fill this gap that was felt by students in architecture school between theory and practice, between architecture, design, we could say, and the field reality. And this gap actually is felt today, so the festival is still going on. Those events, those festivals were a way for us to tackle very basic questions. What I am building with, what are the local resources I can rely on to settle in a place and make it live? This resource can be material, it can be immaterial, it can be human. And it's very interesting to see that today, in our daily project, we are tackling the very same question, finally, in our action and project. So maybe, yes, if we could underline something common in all of this initiative, is that they gather people and stimulate interaction in various public around materials. And when I say various public, yes, it's important for us because we aim to transmit and to diffuse a maximum knowledge to people that are not usually participant to the act of building. So this festival was finally our entry door for interrogating this question of reuse and the territorial resources, and more specifically, yes, reuse of building material. So the big question that rapidly emerged from the scene in the collective and the people participate to this event was simply what do we do with all this construction material at the end of the event? What do we do with these remaining stocks that you can see on the picture? And how do we build an ephemeral city and anticipate at the same time the deconstruction of the city and to make sure that all the material are reintroduced in their original system where they came from? So that triggers, of course, question of gestion, of anticipation, sorry, of organization, but moreover, it pushed us to understand the cycles of the material and the economy and the people behind all of these materials. that we traditionally use to build architecture. Maybe another fundamental potential we figured out with those festivals is that even if all those cities were ephemeral, something was something was always staying in those places, even if the material were not, because of all this social intensity and the event and the bounds created with the local territory within this little frame of 1 week. And the event fed, and maybe activated local initiative from the inhabitant for the traditional or more untraditional actors of this urban fabric, and help them in a way to think the development of the site at mid or long term. And that was the beginning also, a similarity to our reuse practice of the what we call, or what we used to call, transitional urbanism, or urbanism of the transition. And that's not the subject today, but it's very linked to our daily practice, so it has to be underlined. So yes, this festival was containing all the germs that constitute our organization today: the limitation of means, the reuse of building element, of course, the social and societal impact, and maybe the most important is the will to actually do things and to maybe catch up with the theme of tonight, which is reuse. We have a lot of things to do and to settle, but maybe one of the most important is the energy of doing things. So, waste or resources? The answer is probably a question of glasses. So, one of the biggest challenge for Bellastock and for other people committed into the reuse system is to help people to change their glasses, because we know now that there is no such thing as waste, and that the challenge is a more cultural one than a technical or an economical or whatever. And again, history is a good start to think this question of waste through, and there is an abundant literature that shows that the waste are kind of an invention from the 20th century. It was underlined just before. So among all the actors involved in this reuse teams, Bellastock, we especially focused on the role of the architect, and that maybe is a part of the answer to the question that was asked just before. Because of course we are mainly architects, and we come from architecture school, and yes, we think in our approach that the architect is a key actor to help in developing new structure of a new culture of reuse, and more directly to enhance the building trade we are talking about tonight. So for the architect, reuse is finally a great and tremendous opportunity and process, because it allows to reconnect in a way with the question of the materiality of the architecture, and adding this question of materiality to, yes, the basic consideration between form and function, which can not answer all the questions together. It's also a way, and Rotor underlined it, to start a construction project with the existing, and not to start from scratch, to take what's already there and to live with it and to build with it, and to avoid, yes, beginning with this terrible blank page. We also figured out, like many other people, that architects are very absent in the world of demolition, of deconstruction, and reuse. Yes, is a way for architects to maybe reinvest this world of deconstruction, and we think that's at the same time we need architects to build a building, but also to deconstruct them. And maybe you see it's a way, and that's what we can see on the picture, to see, okay, today the chain of construction actor is very fragmented. So the architect is most of the time completely disconnected from the production chains on the material. He's totally foreign to logistic aspects, to organizational aspects, to economic and social impact of the material he prescribes. And in that way, yes, reuse is a way to recreate a trust between the stakeholders that are active in a project or in a work site, and not with, yes, centralized or normative text, but with the field itself and the materials themselves. And that's very important to us. So the possibility offered by reuse is to, yes, relocated in a way the infrastructure of production of building elements. And you can see on the screen on the left an historical perspective of what can be an in situ delocalized production of material. And on the right side of the picture, an experimentation we had in one of our festival. So yes, the potential of relocate the production is to us a central question, and it's, yes, as we can imagine, will give certainly more resilience to the territory, and we all know that today, and especially now, we need to, yes, to get back to something more local in terms of production, and to yes, maybe balance this globalization and the delocalization of production. Yes, it's always it's also a way to reconnect with the history of the construction, the history of architecture, and more specifically the history of technical of construction for the architects to reinvest in order to deconstruct the building. Another aspect that structure Bellastock approach in this reuse question is that what we could call repurposing things and objects and material and building elements, which is an action that consists in exploring the potential of reusing a building element for a different use that he had initially. And it allows, of course, to give a second life to materials that can no longer assume what they were made for. And also it stimulates yes, a tremendous creativity for the reuser and the designer and the architect to think and design new objects and new structures with their own sense. So this logic can apply to little objects like this luminaire we can see that is made from steel pipes and sky dome. But with time we also figured that this practice actually was upscalable and actually offered quite infinite possibilities for architects and builders. So you can see some example of those projects that repurposed material that didn't fit anymore to their original use. So you have window frames, you have ancient doors, you have glass panel, etc., etc. So yes, we think those projects are in a way a proof that the reuse or the repurposal, whatever, is a practice that can apply to large-scale projects in very diverse contexts, diverse program, diverse public or private command, and that's finally one of the FCRBE project objectives is to make this demonstration. That's okay. Look, now it's possible. Reuse is totally fitting with big scale architecture project.
Merci Hugo. Thank you, Hugo. So now the question is, after the looking of the great scale project and all the topics that are approached during the festivals about materials, the question is how to stimulate the practices of reuse by research and experimentation. And as Hugo said before, the Bellastock focused its interest on the history of construction and building techniques and in the roles of architects in the processes of reuse and especially deconstruction in order to stimulate the reuse practices. So it all really began in 2012 with the festival named Le Grand Détournement. I will not translate it, but the festival took place in l'Île Saint-Denis, North Paris, and the name of the event Le Grand Détournement is a nod to the reference of a film of the same name, which was made from extract of film already released to give an unpublished one from existing resources in a stock already made. The festival's topic is, in 2012, waste and reuse. The topics of the festival is waste and reuse, and the participants are expected to collect, sort, and products and materials and objects on that site that has to be demolished. And these objects that are then identified as waste has to be the subject of the construction of an ephemeral city during a week. So the participant have to use the available resources. You can go next. So on site, this festival initiates Rotor, which is a study and a research program conducted for the ADEME. The subtitle of the study is Le ré-emploi, passerelle entre architecture et industrie. So Bellastock conducted with other project partners this study, and it launches Bellastock on the subject of deconstruction and on the evolution of the role of the demolishers in circular economy applied to the construction sector towards a role of deconstructors. And it is now a question, as Michael said before, a question to see the demolishers as suppliers of materials rather than evacuators of material, and to allow buildings that has to be demolished or rehabilitated to be read as a stock of material and not an amount of waste. So Bellastock got the opportunity with this festival and this study to stay on the demolition site, the Printemps warehouses, and to create a platform, an experimentation platform, Act Lab, so to have a tool to experiment reuse practices. So it became a tool to stimulate the practices of reuse, and on the site were experimented methods of deconstruction, dismantling, and also it was a logistic tool to store materials before their reuse and to experiment ways of storing them before their reuse. It finally was a prototyping, a place for prototyping products and objects from collected elements in the demolition site. So once the repair study is completed after 2 years of work on deconstruction methods, the need arises to continue the research and to find outlets and uses to these materials in architectural and urban projects. The integration, the second part of repair study has therefore been launched in 2014, and on the sorry, and I need to read my notes. So the second part of the study is then launched, and it's about the integration of these collected materials in architectural projects, both on the study phases and in the construction phases, again, in particular through experimentation, prototyping, and on-site testing techniques intended to be proposed to the many actors and players of the construction industry. So this study, which aims to massify the practices of reuse, also brings to light the challenge of speaking a common language among the various actors of project, and equipping the actors of the project to deal with techniques and materials that are not new, but that were left beside for a long period. So Bellastock went to look for the various actors of the construction projects, such as project managers, building owners, architects, etc., but also insurers and building inspection offices, in order to put them around the table, to gather them together, and to raise in collegial dynamics the stakes, challenges, and levers for the implementation of reuse in architectural and at architectural and urban scale. So the project is becoming a way to develop the channels of reuse, and it's a support for developing these channels. So the writing experiment, you can go next. So that was about the on-site testing and prototyping techniques, and that was about that's now slide. So the writing and the experimentation and proposal of these methods written between various partners and actors of the project. They allowed to, this publication allowed to put the different actors around the table and to develop channels of reuse specifically for consent projects. So you can go next slide. So these methods and the relocating the channels of production and construction of the materials and the resources available on site were developed for specific projects with Bellastock and other partners. So the cultural challenge posed by the reuse of construction materials is also approached through transitional urbanism, as Hugo said before, by the implementation of tools such as material transformation platforms on the sites of the projects. As you see, this example of La Fabrique du Clos in Stan, city North Paris too, illustrates quite well the support of transitional urbanism and the setting up of a temporary equipment, both dedicated to the transformation of materials and at the same time being a support for pedagogy and sensitization to the stakes of circular economy and to apply to the construction. You can go next. So these devices developed with the project owners, the architects, the construction companies, etc., and as well the local actors and inhabitants, allowed the project to make readable and visible the stocks of materials that were present on site and available for the next project. The goal was to change the vision of these resources from a waste to that resource. And you can go next. So once the resources had been identified in the various projects and in the territory, so they were identified as flow of materials, as channels and skills present in the territory, and as well as places that can be used as supports, as for transitional urbanism, for transformation of materials and for sensitization to the question. The question appeared of organizing the reuse at the scale of cities and territories and address the issue of urban metabolism at a greater scale and to give a bigger vision of the circulation of materials between various suppliers that are supplier sites or receiver sites or even resellers in all across Northwestern Europe.
So from a festival to urban metabolism, what a big zoom. So yes, the logical follow-up to those studies was, yes, to study the building trade at national level. So the map you are seeing here is the result of 3 years of traveling across the country. It has been quite an adventure. We can see that the reuse trade is quite dense. We have more 300 companies spread all over the territory, and this survey is probably not exhaustive. The first learning that we made on this study is to say, okay, for people who are beginning in reuse, who are totally neophyte, look, you don't start from nothing. All of these people and all of the skills and the know-how on the reuse practice can help you in your project, from deconstruction, sorting, reparation, processing, transport, installation of reuse product, etc. Yes, have a quick glance on this map, and maybe the second learning is that for people who doubt of the reliability, economically speaking, of the use practice, we can say that these people inherently, just because they exist, are in sort of a proof that the reuse practice are economically viable. The survey also shown the specificity of each territory. That is to say, the type of reclaimed material circulating are very different from a region to another. and it recalled us, yes, that the reuse practice are also linked with local culture, tradition, and local knowledge that have been lying there from decades. And it's interesting to see that we have material, but we have also people behind those material. So the study was for us like a sociological investigation, and it allows us now to like paint a kind of fresco of the socio-professional profile we encountered. And what you can see here is the big diversity, the striking diversity, speaking for us, of all these actors, from demolishing company that often dedicate a stock for reused material when the economic balance is interesting, to specialized reclaim dealers that mostly see the patrimonial and the historical value of the component, and Salvo talked about this. You have also new company gathering maybe most of the time younger generation that are involved in the sustainable development and that maybe see more an environmental value in those products. And very important, the actor of the social and solidarity-based economy, mostly the construction and curage company, because what we know now is that actually Envie Le Labo is one of them in a sense. And yes, the potential of the deconstruction and the reuse trade is to train people. To train people and to stimulate, yes, the integration of people that are not any longer employed. And we all know that, you know, this reversibility between deconstruction and construction allows to train both of the occupation in the building sector. So the interesting thing was also that most of these enterprises come from various backgrounds and have different motivation, but they are all sharing, you know, this common umbrella, which is reuse, and de facto they participate to the circular economy trade. Okay.
We are running a bit late, but you can still give a conclusion.
One of the aspects, yes, we want to underline also is that the FCRBE partner was not the only one to investigate the reuse trade in France. And we have a lot of people that are doing the same job in a way at a local level. And we want to underline that, yes, this local action is also a key to organize efficient reuse teams. So if you recognize yourself or of a organization scouting for reclaimed dealers, yes, please participate to the exchange of the next months and manifest yourself. And maybe a last word to finish this too long presentation. What are the challenges for tomorrow? Rotor spoke about this. The main one is maybe to find this balance, this new balance between labor value and resource value that already exists not very long ago. And the question is how to close this parenthesis open by the 20th century. But what is sure, and to reuse words of the FCRBE team that we use at the beginning of the project, all these actors that you saw on the map and on the picture are certainly planting some seeds for a future circular economy in the construction sector. And we have to keep in mind that, okay, we have the feeling that the trade is developing and is quite in good health, but actually we have also to remind that this trade is quite fragile. So if we really want to see the massification of all of those practices, that activity, we have to take care of it and to, yes, put all the effort to stimulate it, and with the means we have at our disposal.
Thank you, Hugo. It was not too long at all. It's just someone behind the back told me to ask you to stop. Thank you very much. Peut-être pour clôturer cette première conférence, et d'atterrir à l'échelle de la ville et des politiques publiques. J'aimerais inviter Florentin Letissier, qui est adjoint à la mairie de Paris. Bonjour, enchanté.
Bonjour.
Bienvenue. Et donc, notamment pour que vous nous donniez un peu une idée de voir comment la capitale française œuvre pour le réemploi et l'économie circulaire. So I'll give the floor to Florentin Letissier. We represent the city of Paris, and we will conclude this conference on a circular and reuse note, more from a political perspective. The floor is yours. In French or in English, it's up to you.
I could try in English, but I'm not so good, so I will talk French if it's okay for you.
It's no problem.
Ok. Merci déjà de m'avoir invité à cet échange. Je suis vraiment très heureux donc, de représenter la ville de Paris. Je ne sais pas si je regarde une caméra d'ailleurs. Il y a... D'accord, ok. Très heureux donc de représenter la ville de Paris aujourd'hui. Nous sommes très engagés à la ville de Paris sur ces questions d'économie circulaire. Donc moi, je suis en charge à la ville de Paris des questions d'économie circulaire et aussi d'économie sociale et solidaire, qui est un secteur en fait qui regroupe notamment des associations, les coopératives, les entreprises sociales. Et on a beaucoup dans ce secteur de l'économie circulaire d'acteurs justement de l'économie sociale et solidaire, comme Envie, qui accueille aujourd'hui ce bel événement et avec lequel on a toujours plaisir à travailler. Donc pour vous dire, l'économie circulaire, c'est vraiment venu à l'agenda des politiques publiques, y compris locales, sous la précédente mandature municipale. C'est-à-dire, en gros, entre 2014 et 2020, on a eu vraiment ce thème d'économie circulaire qui est monté en force. Et beaucoup de citoyennes et de citoyens ne connaissaient pas l'économie circulaire, ne savaient pas ce qu'était l'économie circulaire. Et donc, on était plutôt dans le temps de l'explication, de la sensibilisation. Aujourd'hui, dans le cadre de cette nouvelle mandature, on est vraiment sur l'idée de déployer maintenant fortement des solutions d'économie circulaire, des projets d'économie circulaire, et notamment dans le secteur du bâtiment, dans le secteur de la rénovation des bâtiments, dans le secteur aussi de l'ameublement, enfin dans beaucoup de secteurs. Mais pourquoi ce secteur en particulier est important ? C'est parce qu'on a vu à travers nos études en interne à la Ville de Paris, puisqu'on a un département qui s'appelle l'Agence de l'écologie urbaine au sein de la Ville de Paris, avec des ingénieurs très pointus sur ces sujets, qui ont montré en fait que 80% aujourd'hui des déchets à Paris, si on calcule, si on fait un ratio en tonnes, ce sont des déchets de chantier, des déchets de construction. Donc on a vraiment un enjeu majeur aujourd'hui sur ce qu'on peut appeler l'urbanisme circulaire ou la construction, les techniques de construction circulaire. Et ça implique aussi de repenser toute la question évidemment des déchets de chantier, des déchets de construction. Et c'est un axe vraiment d'action dans le cadre de mon mandat, puisque j'ai identifié 5 filières prioritaires dans l'économie circulaire, dont le secteur du bâtiment, de la construction, et aussi le secteur, ce qu'on appelle des D3E, électronique, électroménager, numérique. J'en parle aussi parce qu'on est à Envie aujourd'hui. Donc, qu'est-ce qu'on va faire concrètement ? On part du principe qu'il y a un mouvement global quand même dans l'économie circulaire, y compris dans le secteur de la construction, y compris dans les grands groupes, aujourd'hui dans les géants du BTP, qui commencent à se positionner plus ou moins sincèrement, plus ou moins fortement, mais qui ont quand même un discours là-dessus. Et puis on a des acteurs aussi comme Bellastock, voilà, qui très innovants, très dynamiques, qui font aussi beaucoup de plus en plus de médias, qui intéressent beaucoup les étudiants, les gens qui se forment sur ces questions-là. Et donc, notre enjeu, c'est de dire voilà, comment aussi à un moment, on arrive à rassembler tous ces acteurs-là, à les faire dialoguer ensemble pour faire émerger des projets. Parce que si on veut arriver à faire émerger des projets à l'échelle, comme on dit, de relativement grande échelle, pas juste faire la petite touche en bois réemployée dans un grand bâtiment, mais vraiment faire des projets urbains en économie circulaire, il faut qu'on arrive à faire travailler tout le monde ensemble, y compris sur des gros projets d'aménagement, des gros ZAC, comme on dit, donc des grands projets de réaménagement de quartier. Et donc, c'est notre ambition. Et pour faire ça, on a plusieurs outils. D'abord, le premier outil, et je sais qu'il y a beaucoup de professionnels sans doute qui nous écoutent aujourd'hui, c'est l'outil du PLU. C'est l'outil réglementaire qui cadre la manière dont on peut construire à Paris. Excusez-moi, je sais pas, vous devez traduire
Non,
D'accord, parce que D'accord, pardon, parce que je suis parti sur mon développement. Donc cet outil du PLU, on va sur un PLU bioclimatique. Hein, c'est quand même une première à l'échelle française en tout cas, puis peut-être que dans d'autres pays ça se fait déjà, mais l'idée c'est qu'on va construire tout notre plan local d'urbanisme en intégrant notamment fortement les questions d'économie circulaire. Donc le message qu'on envoie aussi à tous les acteurs de la construction, du BTP, c'est de leur dire, plus vous allez intégrer dans vos chantiers, dans vos techniques de construction, dans votre manière de gérer les déchets de chantier, des techniques d'économie circulaire, plus la ville de Paris va vous faire une place aussi dans les opérations d'urbanisme. Donc ça, c'est le premier élément. Le deuxième élément qu'il faut qu'on travaille, et on travaille aussi avec Bellastock, c'est qu'il faut qu'on arrive à faire émerger des acteurs dont c'est vraiment le cœur de métier, j'ai envie de dire l'économie circulaire, et d'arriver à les positionner fortement justement dans le tissu économique du secteur. Et je sais que Bellastock a un beau projet aussi de faire vivre la coopérative en allant chercher des acteurs, y compris des collectivités publiques comme la Ville de Paris. Et moi, j'y suis très sensible et j'espère qu'on arrivera à avancer là-dessus et à concrétiser des choses dans les mois et les années qui viennent. On a évidemment tout un enjeu sur la question des déchets. On veut aller vers ce qu'on appelle des chantiers zéro déchet. Donc pour ça, il y a toute une logistique aussi à mettre en place, puisque dans une ville comme Paris, qui est une ville extrêmement dense, c'est une des villes les plus denses du monde. Donc comment on fait pour avoir des logistiques de construction de chantier qui soient vertueuses aussi d'un point de vue environnemental? C'est un défi. Donc on a notamment l'idée d'utiliser aussi la Seine. La Seine, parce qu'on peut faire beaucoup de logistique de déchets via la Seine. On a fait des expérimentations du côté du port de Bercy avec des barges pluviales, avec des péniches. On va justement chercher des déchets de chantier, donc en quantité assez importante, pour les acheminer après vers des déchetteries où ils pourront être vraiment bien recyclés et réemployés. On a des choses qu'on travaille aussi sur la cyclo-logistique. Donc là, évidemment, c'est plus compliqué parce que on ne peut pas transporter d'énormes quantités, mais il y a des choses très intéressantes qu'on peut faire. Et nous, en tant que Ville de Paris, quels sont nos outils concrets pour intervenir? On a un outil très fort qui sont nos marchés publics. C'est-à-dire que là, on lance dans les prochaines semaines l'élaboration du nouveau schéma de la commande publique de la Ville de Paris, que j'ai donc l'honneur de copiloter avec l'adjoint aux finances. Et il faut notre objectif, c'est de mettre un certain nombre de clauses, notamment environnementales, pour l'économie circulaire. Donc ça, c'est un outil important. On a évidemment l'outil classique de la subvention, c'est-à-dire qu'on finance des acteurs pour les aider à investir dans des pratiques vertueuses d'un point de vue environnemental. On a l'outil de la communication, et ça c'est un outil très important, c'est faire passer des messages. Voilà finalement ce que j'essaie aussi de faire aujourd'hui à ma modeste place, mais de dire aux professionnels du secteur, la Ville de Paris sera à votre côté, a conscience de ces enjeux, veut avancer avec vous là-dessus. Donc voilà, et puis on a un dernier outil peut-être aussi important, c'est la question de l'immobilier, puisqu'à Paris, c'est une ville très chère. Trouver des locaux à Paris, c'est extrêmement cher. On a la chance d'avoir quand même un parc social, comme on dit, c'est-à-dire on a des grands acteurs du logement social qui ont quand même beaucoup de locaux, donc de locaux aussi à réaménager. En économie circulaire, c'est notre objectif, et aussi de pouvoir faire la place dans le parc immobilier de Paris à des acteurs comme Envie, comme Bellastock, pour leur permettre aussi de s'installer et de concrétiser des projets. Voilà donc voilà notre ambition. Donc juste un dernier petit mot pour vous dire la méthode, puisque je pense qu'il y a peut-être des gens qui seront intéressés. Dans le cadre de mon action, on organise ce qu'on appelle des dialogues de filières, c'est-à-dire que dans les filières prioritaires qu'on a identifiées, dont la filière de la construction du BTP, on organise des grands tours de table, notamment sur des sujets d'économie circulaire. Et dans les prochaines semaines, d'ici à cet été, je vais réunir un premier grand événement sur ces questions, j'espère avec Bellastock et avec beaucoup de personnes. Toutes les personnes qui seront intéressées seront les bienvenues. Et on essaiera de se mettre d'accord sur un premier diagnostic. Quels sont les freins aujourd'hui à Paris qu'il faut qu'on arrive à lever pour aller encore plus loin, et puis surtout quelles sont les solutions qu'on propose pour l'avenir. Voilà.
Merci beaucoup, c'est très, très, très intéressant à entendre. Je pense que notamment dans le projet FCRBE, on développe un tas d'outils qui pourraient être tout à fait utiles pour la Ville de Paris sur les questions du réemploi, et notamment sur la question de comment prescrire du réemploi dans le cadre d'appels d'offres publics. Donc Bellastock vous fera certainement passer toutes les informations. J'ai une question qui vient d'apparaître pour vous sur mon écran. Et donc la question c'est, est-ce que la Ville de Paris se limite juste à la Ville de Paris dans son économie circulaire, ou est-ce qu'elle travaille aussi sur un territoire plus large, et quelles sont vos limites, et dans quelle mesure vous n'êtes pas seulement Paris, mais vous êtes aussi une capitale, et voilà, c'est une question de je ne sais pas.
Maybe we can just translate briefly the question into English. So Corentin just presented the different leverage that the city of Paris is activating to foster circular economy and circular practices in the construction industry, which is one of the main sector concerned by this notion. And the questions that has been asked concerns the limits of the action of the city of Paris. Is it limited to the inner circle of Paris, or does it extend beyond the boundaries of the city, I would say?
Alors évidemment, moi je suis élu de la ville de Paris, donc mon pouvoir d'intervention directe, il est sur la ville de Paris. Je ne sais pas comment c'est dans d'autres pays, peut-être d'autres personnes qui nous écoutent aujourd'hui, mais en France, les questions de millefeuille administratif, comme on dit, c'est-à-dire il y a beaucoup d'échelons territoriaux qui se superposent. Donc à Paris, nous, on a la ville de Paris, autour on a la métropole du Grand Paris, encore autour on a la région Île-de-France, et puis autour évidemment on a la France. Donc pourquoi je mentionne ces différents échelons? C'est parce que c'est vrai que sur ces questions quand même d'économie circulaire dans le bâtiment, dans la construction, on ne peut pas évidemment penser notre action uniquement dans les frontières de Paris intramuros. On est obligé de s'inscrire au moins à l'échelle de la métropole et encore plus à l'échelle de la région, pour plusieurs raisons. D'abord parce que justement nos ingénieurs à l'agence de l'écologie urbaine de la ville de Paris ont fait des études de ce qu'on appelle le métabolisme urbain. C'est-à-dire ils ont essayé de voir quels sont les flux entrants et sortants de matière, de ressources, d'énergie de Paris. Et évidemment, Paris est une ville qui importe énormément de ressources, et notamment de ressources qui sont utilisées dans le cadre d'opérations de chantier, de construction. Donc on est une ville extrêmement dépendante de ce qui nous entoure. Et dans le défi qu'on a dans cette filière de l'économie circulaire, c'est d'arriver à créer le plus possible de boucles locales. Sur la question, par exemple, des déchets de chantier, on a un gros problème de stockage. Où est-ce qu'on va stocker ces énormes déchets de chantier pour pouvoir, y compris sur site, commencer à les trier, à les valoriser, etc. On sait très bien qu'on ne pourra pas tout faire sur Paris. Donc il va falloir qu'on trouve des sites dans la métropole du Grand Paris ou au sein de la région Île-de-France. Et ça, on ne peut le faire que si on est en lien aussi avec nos collègues qui sont élus dans d'autres communes du Grand Paris ou de la région Île-de-France. Mais la métropole du Grand Paris est déjà très sensible à ces questions. Et on a un autre acteur que peut-être certains et certaines connaissent, qui est la Maison des Canaux, qui est un acteur de référence dans l'économie circulaire et dans l'économie sociale et solidaire, et qui se projette beaucoup aussi à l'échelle de la métropole. Donc on a conscience de tous ces enjeux aussi.
Merci beaucoup. Donc il est 21h presque passé, je crois. Donc je pense qu'on va clôturer. Il reste quelques questions, peut-être juste quand même une de toi, nous, du 75. Va-t-il y avoir une suite à FCRBE? Alors oui, il va y avoir une suite à FCRBE. On va continuer pour 2 ans. On a reçu un financement supplémentaire pour continuer l'aventure et on est très content de le faire. Donc restez connectés sur ce que fait FCRBE. So the question was, will FCRBE, the European project we are leading, is going to keep going? And yes, it's going to keep going for 2 more years. And in a way, I think we have managed to have like very strong links with all the partnership, and our objective is to increase by 50% the amount of reclaimed building material being circulating in Northwestern Europe by 2032. So of course we'll keep going our efforts regarding reuse in the construction industry. So I'll just maybe close everything to say it's not a goodbye yet, because for the next 2 weeks we will present on social media portraits of reclaimed dealers. Rotor, Bellastock and Salvo got the chance to visit in France, UK and Ireland, Belgium and the Netherlands. Dans les prochaines semaines, restez connectés sur les médias sociaux parce qu'on va vous faire découvrir des portraits de revendeurs de réemploi en France, en Belgique, aux Pays-Bas et en Grande-Bretagne. Nous vous donnons aussi rendez-vous le 26 mai en soirée pour conclure sur une table ronde qui permettra aux revendeurs d'échanger avec leurs potentiels clients et les prescripteurs pour étudier les freins, les clés et ensemble trouver les leviers. We will be back online on the 26th of May for a roundtable with reclaimed dealers, specifiers and other actors of the construction sectors. Stay tuned and see you soon. Bye. Bye, London.